Today we'd like to explain why we believe Fiat, which owns all of these key brands, to be one of the best investments we've found in a long time, and we can boil it down to four major reasons. Analyst consensus is unjustifiably extremely bearish. It has the mother of all product cycles coming over the next 2 years. It also has an exceptional management team that is under-respected by German and British analysts. And most importantly, it trades at a very cheap valuation with a key segment of its business at a cyclical trough. Over 80% of the analysts that cover Fiat rated a short or a hold, and it's one of the most shorted stocks in Italy. Consensus believes Fiat to be a stalled European automaker with a nice presence in Latin America, but one that is crumbling given weaknesses in emerging markets. We ask, does Maserati's top line look stalled? Or how about Fiat's healthy improvement in European operating margins, in spite of a weakening environment in Italy? Or what about LaFerrari, the €1 million supercar that has an oversubscribed waiting list and is going to help fire up Ferrari's industry-leading profit margins? Consensus also doesn't believe Alfa Romeo can make a comeback, despite Volkswagen's chairman naming it as the one brand with the biggest potential for improvement. Alfa's showroom has added a third model, and by 2015 will have tripled its showroom presence with differentiated luxury cars, which we'll go into later. There we have it. Consensus goes ahead and cuts Latin American profits in half, which we do as well, yet doesn't give Fiat any credit for its luxury onslaught, nor Chrysler's robust product refreshment cycle it is in the midst of. Consensus also believes that Fiat has a leverage problem, yet if we count pensions as debt, its leverage profile is not too far away from GM's. To be clear, we are leveraging auto debt and pensions by modified EBITDA, which adds back pension expense. Even our favorite Financial Times column can't get the debt picture right, and it included Fiat's debt from its bank, yet it failed to net the loans against this debt. To be honest, the liability structure of automakers isn't the simplest to follow. Some sell-side analysts have insisted that despite Fiat's move to merge with Chrysler, it still has a leverage problem. The bondholders would disagree, sending Fiat's 5-year notes up to 110 cents on the dollar, bringing its yield down to 4.8%. Just today, the Wall Street Journal argued that Fiat has been underinvesting in product, which has hurt its market share in Europe. This is completely false, and it's a very outdated perception. If you actually look at data, Fiat Chrysler has actually outspent Ford on an absolute basis and has far outspent GM and Ford as a percentage of sales. What the CEO has done was fail to invest in European factories during the nadir of the downturn so as not to risk a negative return on invested capital. Consensus has also been cautious on the Brazilian market, but nearly all of this weakness can be attributed to an expiration of the tax breaks from 2012 and a declining Brazilian real. In November, Fiat's Brazilian sales were at the low end of the typical range, but that's primarily because of a key model refreshment occurring in the month. Otherwise, Fiat sales in the country have been quite stable. The automaker has been capacity constrained in Latin America, and neither ours nor consensus estimates include any contribution from the coming capacity expansion, which will produce larger models than the automaker currently does. The euro has had an unabated rise against the real, which has reduced the value of Fiat's Brazilian profits. Yet these forex headwinds have managed to create a tailwind for Fiat in its purchase of Chrysler. The final buyout price was €200 million lower than if the same agreement had been struck this summer. Our optimism in Fiat lies in a robust product introduction and refreshment cycle that it's in, and it can all be summed up by this chart, which shows the average market response to refreshed and new products. Products that have been ignored for a while, similar to most of Chrysler's vehicles today, on average more than double their selling volumes after the refreshment. So while analysts get excited about product launches such as the Mustang, the effects are more incremental in nature versus a complete overhaul of the vehicle. Contrast this to Chrysler's product refreshments, and it's night and day the difference between the new model and the outgoing model. Here's the Red Hot Cherokee, which is already outpacing the curve shown earlier, and the Darts replacement of the Caliber allowed Chrysler to quadruple annual selling volumes. Chrysler has a lot of models that will be completely overhauled in the next 2 years, and these overhauls are much more powerful than the ones most analysts are used to. They're fairly similar to Ford's complete overhaul it experienced in 2009 through 12, whose models are now priced at premiums to Asian competitors as opposed to former discounts, and they continue to take market share away from the former high flyers. Chrysler's refreshment of the Ram has gained the automaker a healthy dose of market share, All the while, GM has been hollering about its own refreshment. Ram has continued to gain share from GM, who, by the way, touted its truck as industry-leading fuel economy despite it getting marginally lower fuel economy than the Ram. It's also about to be blown away by the Ram's new diesel engine, which is reported to be testing north of 27 miles per gallon on the highway. Chrysler has been underperforming in the utility segment as it has had a very choppy transition from the Liberty to the Cherokee. That has now reversed itself as Cherokee is on fire, and it has helped Chrysler to achieve a fresh high in market share for its utilities. One weak area that the Wall Street Journal accurately pointed out has been Chrysler's midsize sedans. What the article failed to mention was that a brand new Chrysler 200 is about to be unveiled at the Detroit Auto Show, and the rebadged Sebring nearly doubled its market share after Eminem's famous Super Bowl commercial, relaunching the same exact product. Given dealers are comparing the new 200 to a Mercedes, it gives us optimism that the 200 can further build on its share gains. The Wall Street Journal claimed that Fiat is losing market share in Europe because it is underinvested in product. This is a complete myth. Because Fiat sales outside of Italy are mostly commercial vehicles in the 500, the introduction of a larger Cinquecento has allowed the company to take market share in most major markets this year. In the UK, Fiat has doubled the market's strong performance, while in France, the brand sales are up 4% versus a 5.5% decline for the market. Spain has seen an even more dramatic reaction, sending Fiat's sales up almost 30% versus a roughly flat market. This year, Fiat will build on these market share gains with the introduction of the Cinquecento X, which is entering the fastest growing segment in Europe, the small SUV market. The reality of Fiat's European market share declines lies in the fact that half of its EU sales used to come from Italy. Yet the Italian market has been so weak that it now represents only 10.7% of the European passenger car market. This is down from over 14% just 3 years ago. And what about Alfa? Over the next couple years, as the showroom gets built out, the company is targeting annual sales of 300,000 units, which would give it a brand value of roughly 5 to 8 billion euros, depending upon the multiple. That would be roughly the size of the entire market cap right now. All of these product refreshment plans mean nothing without a very capable management to execute a very busy business plan. Well, as it happens, we have the best in the industry in Sergio Marchionne. With notable strengths in understanding capital allocation, he has successfully executed numerous turnarounds, and he's a great negotiator. But you can look beyond his resume, and his leadership can actually be quantified against his peers. The government was bought out of its stake in Chrysler at a 10% net loss 2.5 years earlier than GM. And since then, Chrysler's revenue has grown 40%, creating significant incremental value to the business. Yet, although the government sold its stake in GM recently, it still managed to double its loss on the bailout versus Chrysler. The most respected manager in the auto industry, and perhaps in corporate America, is Alan Mulally at Ford. He deserves the praise, and Microsoft stock added over $12 billion of market capitalization the day the company revealed he was on the shortlist to replace the current CEO, Steve Ballmer. Yet Marchionne has managed to handily outperform Mulally over his respective tenure, despite the fact that domestic auto sales in Italy are down 43% since he started, while Ford's domestic autos have managed to return to the same level as when Mulally started. As a negotiator, Marchionne managed to pay half of what Cerberus paid for an 80% stake in Chrysler, and 1/10 of what Daimler paid to take control of the automaker in 1998. We've never witnessed such a great manager receive such a sanguine response from analysts. They've been skeptical about Marchionne's delays in building out Alfa into a full-scale brand, and they've been dismayed that he hasn't closed another Italian factory. While we agree that Alfa is key to flipping Fiat's European division from loss-making to profitable, Marchionne has had a very good reason for the delay. Building out a fleet of large luxury vehicles would have cost Fiat 8 to 9 billion euro, an investment that would have required over 300,000 vehicles in annual sales just to break even. Under the shared platform scenario Fiat finds itself in now, Fiat can now develop the same showroom at a third of the cost. This will allow the investment to break even at selling levels under 100,000 units, levels where it currently sells just 2 small cars into. Understanding well the returns on a capital investment, Marchionne's delay will ensure that even if Alfa misses its 300,000 unit target and only ekes out 200,000 a year, the return on invested capital will flip from negative 20% to almost 40% on the shared platform path. Lastly, Marchionne didn't close an Italian factory because unlike other European automakers, he actually has significant new products to introduce to the market. Fiat estimated that closing an Italian factory would cost it 500 million euro in cash costs, while only saving 100 million euro in cash expenses. For the same price, Fiat can industrialize the Giulia, which will produce an incremental 100 million euro of cash flow even if it only sells 20,000 units a year. This far smaller Mito actually sells more than this right now, so Marchionne's route looks to be the only rational decision one would make in a similar position. And last, but certainly not least, Fiat is a very cheap stock compared to companies with a very similar geographic mix of sales. If it were to trade at a similar valuation of Ford or GM, the stock would be worth roughly double than where it trades today. And even if we drop the pension adjustments, the valuation scenario looks pretty much the same, if not better, comparing Fiat Chrysler to its domestic peers. Also, please remember that the equity represents only 1/3 of the adjusted buyout value, so every improvement in the valuation multiple or cash flow will have a 3x effect on the equity. As detailed in these key drivers, we believe Fiat's EBITDA will grow handily over the coming years, largely driven by luxury products in Maserati, Ferrari, and Alfa Romeo, as well as an overhaul of Chrysler's aged lineup. We include no effects of the Latin American or Asian expansion here, yet do include a mild European recovery in 2015. Looking out just 18 months forward, we believe that Fiat is trading at less than 2 times forward cash flow. And while we caution that these estimates are based on model-by-model math, it relies on leaks to the press on timing of the product launches. Such plans could be different in the 3-year plan that Fiat is going to give the market in April of this year, but it still leaves a healthy margin for error. So as investors today, we are getting a quality company at a cheap relative and absolute value, all while at the bottom of a cycle in Europe, particularly in Italy, which has just shown its first year-over-year sales gain since August of 2011. That's right, green shoots are showing up in Italy, as consumer confidence has increased significantly in recent months. This economic metric has the highest leading correlation to auto sales, and we believe it's starting to show up in the December numbers. All 4 aspects make this one of the best investments we've found in a while. And in closing, we'd like to leave you with some of the CEO's own words at a recent speech.
When Chrysler Group was formed 4.5 years ago in alliance with Fiat, very few people were willing to bet $1 on its survival. As one observer put it, Chrysler is most likely to be liquidated for 3 sticks of gum and a roll of pennies. But we dare to dream big, and we have begun delivering on that dream. We're now profitable. We've announced investments of more than $5.2 billion. We have added more than 22,000 jobs, and our U.S. sales have increased now for 44 consecutive months. Now, I'm not saying these things just to brag about our accomplishment, but to give you an idea of how deep an impact leadership can have on an organization. Chrysler needed to regain faith in itself and start viewing the future as a phenomenal opportunity. It needed to realize that the power to reverse our fate and to create an organization we will be proud of was totally and completely in our hands. We need no magic to change the world. We already have all the power that we need. It's inside us. It's the power to imagine things in a better way. The legacy of the historical Spartans is that they gave the last full measure of devotion to create a better world. And that is why it's important to sustain that optimism, that sense of confidence in ourselves and in the future. It's important to keep going and to keep passions alive. In my life, I've never ever seen anyone make a dream come true without making the commitment to never stop fighting to make it real. And I wish you all a life as Spartans and wage the good fight with courage, with teamwork, and with selflessness. And I also wish you to become, one day, a Leonidas. Thank you very much, and once more, my congratulations to each and every one of you.